If you ever felt bad about slavery, if you ever felt like, ooh, that's something our country hasn't really reckoned with in a mature way, that isn't something we've taken responsibility for at all. Good news. Turns out it wasn't that bad. That's what Florida would have you believe. We can't put up with this. Let's jump into it. This is CBS News.
Florida schools must now teach students about the, quote, benefit of slavery when teaching Black history. The controversial new education standard passed by the State Board of Education earlier this week. Now, this follows Governor DeSantis' so-called Stop Woke Act, which forced the rewriting of education standards there in Florida. A controversial part of these new standards is instruction for middle school students to learn, quote, how slaves develop skills, which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. The largest teachers union in the state has spoken out against the new standards, calling them, quote, a step backward, adding that students deserve the full truth of American history.
Yeah. So just be clear with Republicans every time this kind of stuff comes up. Just make sure to call them what they are. Call them big babies. Start every debate about this with like, look, I'm sorry that Republicans are so cowardly that they can't handle talking about the truth. I'm sorry they're such sensitive little snowflakes that they can't handle a frank discussion about historical events that happened now hundreds of years ago. I'm sorry, over 100 years ago. I'm just sorry that's the character of conservatives. But the fact that they are cowards, the fact that they are weak, shouldn't mean that we teach our children wrong things that don't offend them. You know, it's not on us, society, to make way for the weakness of conservatives. And we can't become weaker for it. We can't have dumb kids because they'll get just stomped on by the competitive real world. I would approach it from that way. Now, they are weak. They're also evil. So, if you want to burn the bridge forever, feel free to also hit them with the truth and say they're evil little see you next Tuesdays that want this. But at no point is it worth considering that they're right, because it's the sort of ridiculous stuff on its face that having a discussion about, that pretending like there's any merit to it at all, would make us all look like fools. They want to teach about the benefits of slavery. The benefits of slavery. Why not teach about the upside to rape? Why not teach about, hey, look, the pleasant part about murder is that it allows for more organ donation. So, two sides to every story. We don't talk enough about the benefits of drunk driving for those that get hammered and not drunk, but actually hit by drunk drivers. Because a lot of the folks that get hit by drunk drivers, they survive, just like a lot of the slaves survived the beatings. A lot of the slaves survived the hobblings that they got when they tried to escape because they were enslaved. We don't talk about the benefits enough. Like if you're hit by a drunk driver and you survive, odds are you're just going to be crippled. And then you get to go in the handicap spaces. And we're doing a disservice to drunk drivers not to talk about the benefits that their victims get in handicap spaces. See how ridiculous we sound when we allow this. This can't fly, and we cannot in my opinion, just wait for somebody to sue and then for it to go up to the Supreme Court and get delayed a bunch of times so a full year of this nonsense is taught. No, this is a lie. We cannot let our children be told this. Salty Saturday. I'm just going to complain about it today. But and there, in the background here, I am looking at more organized ways to get punks that write this kind of stuff tossed in prison. I'm literally looking at the quickest path to imprisoning these sons of bitches because they deserve it. Because I don't want to live in a society where both myself and Ron DeSantis get to be on the same side of a prison cell. We know what this man's character is. We know what he's all about. That's the sort of person who I feel deserves not to be free, just like he feels black people don't deserve to be free. That's where we stand. So I'm looking at it. Seems unrealistic to me, but certainly the very next thing will be, what can people who don't live in Florida do about this garbage law? I don't know yet, but I do want to talk with you about it because I'm awful salty about it. DeSantis and, frankly, the majority of legislators in Florida, they're scum. They are filth, and they deserve to be imprisoned for the rest of their lives. And that is the merciful version of how I feel about them.
For more on this, we are joined by Andrew Atterbury. He is an education policy reporter for Politico based in Florida. Andrew, implying that enslaved people benefited from their bondage has understandably upset many people. How are folks in Florida responding to this?
Sure. Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here from Tallahassee. So that they came out on Wednesday at this meeting, and this is really the first time that people got a glimpse of what these standards look like. And it was a firestorm for the Florida Department of Education and the Board of Education. People that were there weren't too thrilled with these lessons, but the state, they were proud to roll these out. This is something they've been working on for a while. Like you said, they come from the Stop Woke Act. That was something that specifically Governor Ron DeSantis requested last year. The woke part is actually an acronym. It means the Wrongs to Our Kids and Employees Act. That was something that was one of his biggest parts of his agenda back last year. And that what the law actually does, it creates new protections for students and even workers is a whole other part of it, that a person shouldn't be instructed to feel guilt, anguish, or any form of psychological distress due to their race, color, sex, or national origin. So
I know this is supposed to be one of the good guys, and I think it is one of the good guys, but we need to be perfectly clear. It's not protections. It does not give protections to anybody. It doesn't do that. What the Stop Woke Act does is allow people to attack teachers for telling the truth. That's what it does. I realize he's trying to sound clinical about it. Stop it. You're giving a bad impression. You're accepting their framing. Their framing is wrong. It doesn't protect anybody. Nobody was teaching, ever. Nobody was teaching that white people should feel bad about slavery. Nobody was suggesting that that the people alive now were responsible for it. Why? Because that is insane. That said, we absolutely have a responsibility to deal with its aftermath. And the fact that Republicans spend so much time trying to convince us now that we don't has made me confident that I'm right and we do. Also, the fact that every other person on earth acknowledges that that is the case. We have a responsibility to deal with its aftermath, and we have put it off for generations. And now we have people like DeSantis cackling in madness, trying their damnedest to get a good old-fashioned genocide going. I know that if there is such a thing as hell, he'll burn in it, and I'll see him there. But in the meantime, we should hasten his at least his career's arrival to that place.
Because of that new law, they decided that they needed to change all of these the standards too. So they actually created a whole new carve out on Black history, which is why they were so proud of it. It was something that they thought went even deeper than their previous lessons. But whenever these were rolled out and you saw some of the framing of it, some people really took issue with it.
Andrew, I should say that we reached out to the governor's office and they pointed us to a statement that was shared by the Board of Education. It reads in part, quote, Florida students deserve to learn how slaves took advantage of whatever circumstances they were in to benefit themselves and the community of African descendants. How does this differ from what has been taught in the state in the past?
Well, when you look at the lessons, they really didn't have any specific carve-outs for Black history. So this is all...
Hold on. Boy, that's some political spin. Talking about, gotta know how Black folks took advantage of the benefits of slavery. It's just a way for them to say, hey, look, we talked about slavery. And then some kid grew up in Florida, becomes a young adult, and they're surprised why Black people are so mad about slavery. That place where they learned all those valuable skills. They end up having opinions like, well, it was a benefit for them. You see, they were taken out of Africa, which is a savage place, run by savage people. And they were civilized by the white man. They learned valuable skills from the slavers, like how to treat whip scars. How to best treat a ruined foot after somebody takes, say, a sledgehammer to it because you tried to escape for your freedom. You know, they had a lot of friends that had that happen to them, and they learned how to treat these injuries. That's useful. They learned how to cook meals for white folks so they could go on to have illustrious careers serving white folks again. Now for a pittance, they have upgraded to a pittance in their lives. They wouldn't have that pittance if their ancestors hadn't been kidnapped from Africa, lived a life of misery and servitude, and brought here so they and all future generations could exist in their rightful place below white people. That's the opinion they're going to grow up with. Unless we actually do something and force this state to teach the truth.
For a lot of this stuff is new things that they're introducing, which is why the state thinks this is good for them. We're going, hey, we're actually going deeper into some of this stuff. But when you look at, like you said, the way that some of these were worded, like the benefits of it, people said that was just absolutely not okay. I mean, you saw this getting issue. Like people were raising, like civil rights lawyer Benjamin Crump was talking about this. So this was getting a lot more attention than just Florida, which is probably not something that people expected, just from the way that it was rolled out. And as you and the statement that you mentioned earlier, the state is also taking aim at the teachers union, saying that a lot of this is their fault and that they're blowing up an issue that the state thinks really isn't a big deal. And this is something that you see a lot in Florida. DeSantis administration, the Department of Education, they're constantly at odds with the teachers union. This is things that go back to the COVID pandemic, teacher pay. I mean, that's pretty typical for Florida. But But there were other organizations as well. There were state lawmakers, there were Democratic lawmakers who raised issues with this. The NAACP was there. I mean, so there were several other groups too. So it's not just teachers unions, but that's kind of what the state is doing a little bit, is needling the union, saying y'all kind of sparked a lot of these concerns.
Well, I'm sure that there's also parents who are concerned about this, and I'm wondering where we go from here. The Board of Education, made up entirely of DeSantis appointees. So what recourse do parents have if they disagree?
I'm real curious about this. Yeah, let's listen and keep an ear bent for where we can get involved. I'd like to know.
Well, now now this really falls on school districts to carry this out, and then we'll go through picking textbooks and things like that. But as far as the state goes, I mean, these are the standards now. These were unanimously passed by the Board of Education, and the Board of Education stood by these too. You know, they said the whole history is there. They said that they stood by these, and that they kind of downplayed the complaints as saying, you know, that we think this is great, and people are just missing the point, basically. So from the state's perspective, this is pretty much done, which is why you see them defending it today, and they doubled down on it again today, saying that this is what we're going to go with. And you still, even speaking to some of the concerns, I mean, Vice President Kamala Harris spoke out about it. She's supposed to speak in Jacksonville today. So this is getting a lot more attention than I think folks really expected it to.
All right, Andrew Atterbury, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Terrible answer. One of the hopes of this channel is that we keep getting newscasters like that asking that kind of question. What can people do about this? Good. Another hope of this channel is that folks like that guest will begin understanding that they are expected to have an answer. Pretending like this isn't an injustice, that's not an answer. This will be one of the many things that is written about, ironically enough, in future history textbooks about how racist America was. Obviously, if there are protests about this, join them. Join them. I'll be on the lookout. I suggest that we make this a nationwide thing. We hear about laboratories of autocracy. Well, let's acknowledge them as that and react to them as that. This does have national implications. Again, DeSantis is picking up the baton from Trump and just seeing how low America is willing to go. Well, we have to answer that question. The difficulty is, of course, I don't really know how yet. It's Salty Saturday. I'm trying to adhere to the spirit of it because I do think it's healthy. And not dwell too much about what are we going to do. But here on this day, I do want to say the only answer that's unacceptable is to do nothing. Bare minimum, I'm going to find who we bother with emails and phone calls, because that's usually the best way to get things started. But folks, if y'all have suggestions or guests I can have on regarding this issue, let me know. Drop it in the comments or write me at whycdnetwork.com. Let me know. I'd like to talk to a professional organizer of some kind regarding this issue, because my question is, how can people who don't live in Florida help the decent folks of Florida who are currently being assaulted by this nonsense? Let me know. And by God, Ron DeSantis, may he be run out of the USA on a rail.